Well, we got a whole bunch of new crap from my garage into the office. Let's take a look and see what we got. The original, is this the first? Yeah, this is the first Last Unicorn. I guess the only one. This is the Last Unicorn. Star Trek: The Next Generation Player's Guide. Gotta have a player's guide. And did I do the same thing for this book that I did? It's Matt's copy. Whoa, who is this dude? Did I commission this art? Did I do that? I don't remember. Yep, art direction, Matt Colville. That's great. Oh, Terry Pallett, I remember him. Yeah, a lot of original art. Oh, I remember that dude. Yep. And is there, are there screen grabs in here? Yep. So that was, again, me having to sit there and watch endless hours ahead. Matt, I need a picture of Counselor Troy detecting emotions. Okay, well, this is the best I can do. So, yep, this is a game that I didn't work on. I didn't play here. Fellowship of the Ring. So this is the Lord of the Rings RPG that I think, I sort of did a little bit of work on, but there's a kind of a story here. So I got a bunch of these. Oh, OG Traveler. Well, not OG Traveler, actually. This is kind of the edition of Traveler that people, I remember for some reason people didn't like. I don't remember. I remember, didn't I play basically a Scrode Rider from this book? Somewhere in here is a, wow, I vaguely remember a lot of this art. Didn't I play somewhere in here, I thought, it's basically like Barlow's Guide to Aliens, except with stats and not as good art. Hardly any art. Look at this. Maybe I'm just skipping over the, there's like, we don't want to draw the thing. We're just going to give you a skeleton of the thing. Oh yeah, there it is. Yeah, I did. I played one of these guys. I played a Kresh. Yep, I played an intelligent tree in my friend Craig's short-lived. Oh, this is Shadowrun. I think this is Shadowrun 4th edition. I remember that first Shadowrun book, a lot of the things that people give Vampire the Masquerade credit for, Shadowrun actually did earlier, and just in terms of art and presentation. But of course, this, the art in this, I'm going to guess, is probably not as crazy good. Like a couple of color plates here, so we get a couple of color bits. Yeah, I remember the original Shadowrun. I loved the cyberpunk depiction in it. I thought it had the best cyberpunk art of all the different cyberpunk RPGs. But then they put all this fantasy nonsense in here that I didn't really care about. A bunch of people trying to be like Larry Elmore. Trying to be like Larry Elmore. Actually, some of this stuff is, yeah, trying to be like sort of like Brahm a little bit. But yeah, I don't remember what edition this is. But that first edition Shadowrun book, which I guess I don't have anymore. I loved that. Played that Werewolf the Apocalypse, a game I owned, but I don't think I've ever played. That was true of a lot of these. But I ripped off a lot of the setting stuff for my own superhero. This can't be original Vampire the Masquerade. This has to be like, it's 1992. Maybe it is. Maybe it is original. I remember the original Vampire the Masquerade did not know that it was a goth RPG, and the quotes in it, there were like quotes from like Foreigner, you know, and stuff like that. And it was very rapidly adopted by the goth subculture, and sort of like the gamer nerds in college that, you know, that went in that direction loved Vampire the Masquerade. And so they immediately rushed out a new edition of the book that had a lot more goth nonsense in it. I really liked Denominate. I ripped this off for my superhero long-running 3 years. We played every week superhero game, and it was a very kitchen sinky kind of game. It had all the World of Darkness nonsense in it, and it had all the Denominate stuff in it. I really liked this game. Not sure how I felt about the system, but, you know, I think I got a whole bunch of Innomine stuff too. Yep. I remember the 90s. I was a burgeoning game designer in my 20s, and I just remember coming from other games that a lot of 90s design was basically great writing and a complete lack of mathematical rigor. So yeah, I don't know even what that book is. I got more nonsense over here. Wraith. Let's see. I don't know when the last time I even looked at this book was. I love that cover though. This art's pretty good. All black and white, though. All black and white. Couldn't afford color art. Unsure why. Didn't they have money? I thought they had money, but I really love this cover for some reason. It's very evocative. What is this? Ugh. Do I have a whole Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay edition that I didn't even know about? This must be like Black Industries. This must be like second or third. This must be like third edition. We should play this. Definitely, there's one of the great classic Carl Sargent, I think. Adventures is Shadows over Bogenhofen, I think is one of the episodes of it. That is definitely a great classic adventure. We should definitely run that. This is the same group of human beings making the game. Completely different edition of the game. Slightly better design. Star Trek, RPG, Starfleet. I really felt like this line of books where there was worlds, aliens, ships. You looked at those spines and you really knew what you were getting. I thought it was really well, as far as a series went, a series of books went, it was really well designed. Star Trek Narrator's Guide. I did do design in these books. I didn't do anything on this. This was me. This is a Ken Height's book. Ken Height wrote this book and did a fantastic job. This is the original series RPG. This is back when, 1997, 98, Last Unicorn thought that, I guess it's because Paramount told them they had to, I think. But the idea was each TV series got its own RPG, and this was the one for, it doesn't say original series, because that's not what they called it. They called it Star Trek. So this is the start. I spent hours just cleaning up this picture in Photoshop, because it's from a piece of film that had, by the time I got to it, been heavily degraded. And just making it look good on the cover was a huge pain in the butt. But I remember the layout for this just being beautiful. I remember getting that image and spending time in Photoshop cleaning up. Just the layout of this book. It looked like a book from the 1960s. It was gorgeous. And this was kind of a coup getting this thing done. I remember it was really popular when it came out for a little while. This I worked on. I should open this up because I was basically the editor on this. It was my job to go through all of these locations on all of these maps. There's an index in here. So you can look up any location in Middle-earth and find where it is on these maps, regardless of what language you're familiar with that thing for. Like, what if you heard of Khazad-dûm and you don't know that's Moria? Well, I had to write the index that made it so you always ended up at the right place on the map, regardless of what language you were looking the thing up in. It was a huge pain in the butt. And this was, I think, the second, because this is Cities and Strongholds. I'm sure I have the original book somewhere that had the original maps in it. And those maps that we worked on at Decipher, I've seen them everywhere now. I've seen them in game stores. I've seen them in the backgrounds of the making of the Lord of the Rings stuff. They use those maps a lot as references. Oh, yeah, I remember this. Yeah, I really liked this edition of the Marvel Superheroes Adventure game. I believe this is the one that used cards, a deck of cards, and different heroes were different suits. Like Hulk was the strength suit, and he had an ability called the strongest one there is, where Hulk, if you were playing the Hulk and you played a Hulk card, it didn't matter what it was, you automatically won that test. I really liked this edition of the game. I thought the way they used a deck of cards and the suits and numbers to basically power up your abilities was just incredibly well thought out and well executed. So this is something I would definitely like to bust out. What else? What's this? This is kind of the worst of Grimtooth's Traps. So Grimtooth's Traps was a series, I think it was from the Judges Guild or something like that in the late 70s, early 80s. And it was just a series of Rube Goldberg devised traps back from when Dungeons & Dragons was more adversarial and more of like a war game. Can you survive this dungeon I made, right? Then it was a cooperative kind of storytelling nonsense game. And so there's a whole bunch. This is a reissue, obviously. Probably a bunch of new stuff in it. I'm not sure I've ever used anything from this. I've definitely used some of the original Grimtooth's Traps, but they are very much an acquired taste. It's basically a Funhouse Dungeons worth of traps and stuff like that. Let's see, what else? Yeah, so remember I said this is the Coda, C-O-D-A edition. Really good line of books. Like, you know what you got. This is all the starships, not from Next Generation, not from the original series, just all starships. If you like Star Trek, this is the Star Trek Starships book. Let's see, what else? Yep. This is a monster book that I wrote. My friend George, who ran Eden Studios, said, hey, anybody can make a D&D 3 book. Let's make a monster book. And I was like, dope. Why don't you go get a bunch of artists to make art, and don't tell me anything about the art. Like, what is this thing? The guy spent like 10 minutes on that piece. And just give me the art. And I will write all this nonsense. And it was huge. It was a colossal pain in the ass, actually, because creating whole, basically like worlds and backstories just based on these pieces of art, I think was I don't know, it was actually pretty well reviewed. You can go look up reviews of this book, and it did well. I think the money from this was the down payment for the first car I bought with my own money. But it was just a lot of work. I basically went insane working on these things. You know, and the artist would submit the stuff, and the artist might have some idea what this is, maybe not, but George would strip any text from it. And then, because that's what I wanted. I wanted to, like, look at this and be inspired by it. And there's definitely some great stuff in here. And some kind of world-building stuff we did. What is this? It's just a dude. You drew a guy and you put some black ink behind him. Good job. Oh, I remember this. That was a really nice piece of art. That might actually be George. I don't know. That might actually be... I don't know who did that art, but I love that art. Yeah, there's a bunch of nonsense in here. So, yeah, I had to write this whole thing, and I sort of feel like I'm in the same place again, because I got, like, 30 new monsters I got to write for Strongholds and Followers, so people that build temples have something to summon. And that actually is going quite well. I think I've thrown out most of my 3rd edition stuff, but I tend to keep the adventures, because adventures I think I prefer in hardcover, or at least in paper. Reference books are better, I think, in PDF, because searchable PDF, right? You can bookmark stuff, it's super easy. But adventures, I like holding them in my hand when I'm running them. One of my all-time favorite RPGs, Earth Dawn. There's a story with this cover, because I think the guy doing the original cover, it looks like a Doug Beekman piece. The dude doing this original cover, I think, like, delivered something they couldn't use or flaked out at the last minute, and so they had to grab a piece that really had nothing to do with Earths or Dawns. Right? What does this piece of art represent? But yeah, they went with it. Are there credits? Yeah, let's see if I can find book cover. Jeff Laubenstein. I don't know who that is, so nope. Oh, Rick Barry. Yep, I thought I knew who that guy was. A bunch of not bad art in here, too. But yeah, I really like, so, is this not a Greg Gordon design? Yep, Greg Gordon. And he, Earth Dawn is basically an attempt on the part of a game company called FASA to take all the things we assume are true about Dungeons & Dragons and try to contextualize them. Like, why are there dungeons? And there are reasons for this in D&D, but they're sort of hand-waved away and glossed over, whereas this is actually where a lot of, like, Fallout comes from, the notion of they have these cairns that are these underground cities built to withstand 1,000 years of darkness, and you are somebody emerging from one of those, and some of those cairns collapsed a long time ago, and those are the dungeons that you're going to explore. Some of them collapsed recently, some of them collapsed 10,000 years ago or whatever, and the spellcasting system in here was really interesting because it tried to, again, explain why Vancian magic worked the way it did, so I really like that. Here's more of this nonsense. This is a book, I think the only product I've ever had my name taken off of. I did some writing, I think I did some writing for this, but there was just a whole bunch of stuff in here that I thought could have been done better and didn't reflect my ideas of how a game should be designed. And, you know, it was either I fight with the lead designer or I just say, you know what, I'm happy with you guys making this, just leave me out of it. That's the only time I think I've ever done that. And by the way, people love this game and people played it, so don't listen to me. What do I know? This is a game, remember I was telling you about all those sci-fi board game stuff, box set RPG stuff I collected from like the 70s, this is the early 80s. I guess it's a racing game? I don't know, Challenge of Starship Racing series. It looked like, you know, it's the Kessel Run, right? They couldn't call it Kessel Run. It's a bunch of, this tells you how old that idea was, about you having to race through a bunch of black holes and do a smaller distance being a better result. And this is by a company called Yakinto. And Yakinto, I think they were in Texas. And they were a printing company, not a game company. They were a printing company. And I remember Yakinto because they were the guys that printed a lot. They printed like the L5R, CCG. And at one point, because all these, you know, pen and paper companies in the 70s and 80s were coming to them to print stuff, they said, hell, let's start making games. And they also, you can tell what business they were in, right? Before they got into games. Because this is obviously the same form factor as an LP, as a record. So they just took a lot of that cardboard technology that they had and they made games. What else do I have? Oh, did I ever? Aberrant. What do I remember about this? This is like a White Wolf superhero game where you play a bunch of mutant dudes, I think. I remember being really interested in this, and I loved this small form factor. For a while in the 90s, it was more about, because they were always trying to chase after nowadays they call it the blue ocean strategy, where there's this presumed huge audience for your game out there. If only you could crack the nut of why aren't people buying our products? Well, obviously it's because they're 8.5 by 11. You can't fit them in a backpack. So if we make it so that you can fit them in backpacks, nobody's going to care. And fewer people tend to stock them because whatever your shelves are designed for here, they're not going to make sense for this thing. So this tended to be, but I like that form factor. I really like being able to carry the book around and reference it in my backpack, take it to work, drop it in my car, not have to worry about it. So yeah, I remember really liking this this game and that system. Oh, more, I got a whole, you've seen a lot of this stuff, by the way, in the background of Jim Murphy's videos. He's another big fan of Earth Dawn. I don't think either one of us have really played it. I think maybe, oh, here's the closest thing. It's funny what's in the stack, I think. This is, you know, basically, I guess it's kind of the Meta Barons RPG with the serial numbers filed off, or Dune, depending on the point of view. But Fading Suns was huge in the 90s and just had amazing, gorgeous art. And I remember the guys that worked on it were super cool. The guys that designed it and owned the company were super cool. Again, all black and white interiors. Yeah. That's it's funny how we all took that for granted, and color was hard to do and expensive. It was a map of the galaxy. So Fading Suns was huge. In fact, I think they did a miniature game too, which I would love to look at these days. And here is, isn't this Matt Forbeck's game, Brave New World? Is Pinnacle, I think? Let's take a look. I bet it is. Yeah, Pinnacle. So this is their superhero game, basically their superhero version of Aberrant, which I remember had a really cool kind of American flag. If you're not familiar with Howard Chaykin and American flag, it's completely brilliant. And as I recall, this was very, I don't know if it was inspired by it, but that's what it reminded me of. Can't have a DM's guide. We've got a power shield. Yeah, definitely. This definitely has a lot of American flag. Also, I guess a little bit of martial law. That's another now obscure comic, I guess. More creatures. What's this book about? It's about creatures. It's about the monsters that you might fight. The monsters you might fight. He's got a tribble on his head. And I think that's perfect. Yeah, that's great. That's how a line of science fiction books should be. Monsters. Spaceships. Monsters. Planets. Spycraft, AEG spy game, which they did a couple other editions of. I think this is the first one. Kevin Wilson would go on to do a whole bunch of design at Fantasy Flight Games. And here, I guess this is the last piece of Obscuriana you're going to be inflicted upon you. This is the Dune role-playing game, which I art directed. That's Mark Zug drawing what I told him to draw. Probably too busy a cover. I don't think a real art director that knew what they were doing would have commissioned something like that, but I liked it. And this is, you know, it was always hard for me to take those other games seriously because we had full color art on every page. And this book was gorgeous. Like, this was the best looking RPG that had come out, I think, and would not be equaled for quite a while. And unfortunately, they only printed, they printed 3,000 of these. And because the only reason they did it was because they had bought, Wizards of the Coast had bought Last Unicorn Games, and now we're going to make their own. We were going to make a new version of this game. It was so weird. I remember at one point we had to have, like, there was some screw up between the Herbert estate and who we had licensed this game from, and ABC, who was producing the miniseries, because ABC, there was this fear on the part of the estate that ABC thought they had the rights to quote-unquote books based on Dune, and that this counted as a book, and so they wouldn't, even though we had the license, they wouldn't approve it for us to publish. So we had to sit on it for like 9 months. This thing was done, and just sat there, and we couldn't, you know, we couldn't publish this book. And eventually, at one point in a gambit, on our website, we basically published a thing saying, there's the Beast Ron. We got to use the old CCG art. We published a thing saying that we were going to announce the release date of the book in X number of days. And that was giving the estate kind of the nuclear option to either, you know, give us our money back for the license or let us publish it. And we did. And so Wizards of the Coast buys us in this process. And they're like, well, we're going to pay you guys to make a brand new RPG. And all this work you did, some of it may still be useful, but it's all going to be based on the D20 system, which we were super excited by because my friend Owen and I, he was the director of this project, really felt like Dune was perfectly suited for classes and levels. Like, you definitely meet a whole bunch of like high-level characters and multi-class characters. And so we were super excited about the D20 version of this. And just sort of as a favor to the fans, they didn't need to do it. There was no financial benefit to it. They just knew that the fans of this property had been waiting for this book for a while. They printed like 3,000 of them, and you can get it at GenCon. I had 4 or 5 copies of it, but I gave them each away at. I would run at local conventions. I would run tournaments of the Dune board game, my favorite board game. And because I didn't have anything else to give away that would really juice the audience, I gave away my copies of this book, which is like, it went for $300 on eBay. So that was a pretty good prize for a board game tournament. And I hung on to one last one. So yeah, they were going to print. They were going to make a new game, but then the Herbert estate was like, well, we only asked for $75,000 from, or 50 grand, I think it was, from Last Unicorn Games. But that 50 grand from Last Unicorn Games meant this was the most important project they were working on. And in order to make a Dune RPG the most important project Wizards of the Coast was working on, that's going to cost you a lot of money. Because obviously the more money the Herbert estate charges Wizards of the Coast for the license, the more important the project is to Wizards of the Coast, because they want to recoup that money. And if you don't charge a ridiculous amount of money for your license like that, then your property is going to be a second-class citizen at whatever company is doing the licensing. Because obviously that company has their own properties, Magic the Gathering, that they want to get out, right? And that's going to be always number one. D&D and Magic is always going to be number one. And then any licensed stuff is going to be number 2 or 3 or 4. And the licensor doesn't want that, so the licensor charges a ridiculous amount of money for the license. And Wizards of the Coast said, pass. So this was ended up being inadvertently the only Dune RPG, and this is another trip, probably not the last one, but certainly the most 90s one from my garage of just a bunch of nonsense, just a bunch of obscuriana from the late 90s, early 2000s, the kind of stuff you would pick up at GenCon. And I remember I played a lot of the Marvel game, and I stole stuff relentlessly from all these other games. And there are a lot of games in here I would still play. I would still play Fading Suns, I would still play Earth Dawn. So yeah. Probably more of these videos to come.
Armor, no. I was playing that. I didn't care. Thin Red Line, no. And Marine 2002, I played.
What is on the first page? What is Time War? What is this game?
Okay, there's 4 factions. Oh, you're into this. There's 4 factions in Time War.
Yeah. And
you have a little headquarters, and you have to go back to certain points in time because you're at war with all the other players, and change time to screw up their system.
Oh, nice.
So they have a timeline they're trying to push.
Huh.
You want to change it and shift it to your timeline.
That sounds like Chrononauts, except
except it's 1970s.
Exactly. It can't be Chrononauts because it's from...
Well, it's because they went back in time.
Yeah.
And changed to make Time Wars.
That's smart.
Chrononaut people have used.
So what's Starfall?
I can't remember too much of Starfall. It's a space combat game, but I do remember Shooting Stars. Shooting Stars was like a space tactical fighter combat game,
right? And
we used this system to play Traveler.
Oh, really? Oh, yeah, that's cool.
Because Traveler had their own space system, but it was kind of clunky, and Shooting Stars allowed you to use more ships. Now, Ironclads and the expansion of Ironclads is great because this is Civil War naval combat. It's really, really
It's funny because this is a future tank game called 88, because in 1988 was in the future.
No. 88 is a German, it's the caliber of this German gun.
Okay. I'm not, it's...
Right, so it's actually
I'm in one sense not smart enough to know what that is.
It's basically just an armored combat game in North Africa.
Because this thing looked to me like a science fiction
Ultimatum was awesome. This was toe-to-toe with the Ruskies. So it was a matter of you having the Cold War game a
game of nuclear confrontation.
That's right, nuclear confrontation.
All right, so what's on the back?
Nuclear. Now, on the back, let's see, we've got Dallas, didn't play it. Swashbuckler.
Is that a licensed game? Yeah, it is. That's JR.
It is.
JR Ewing.
It is. But where are there better ones? I want to see if I have the old ones. Maybe they stopped playing. I didn't play Neck and Neck because we had Win, Place, and Show, which was an Avalon Hill game.
You didn't play this jockey racing game because you already had a jockey racing game.
We had a much superior jockey racing game called Win, Place, and Show, which was like awesome. Swashbuckler was a man-to-man combat where they had an idea that people would get into playing role-playing games.
Right.
In the world of the Three Musketeers, if they had it. No.
Interesting. Three Musketeers. That's cool.
I don't remember.
What is Hero? What is Hero? What's this one? What's Hero?
I don't know.
Okay. Well, what do I even have you around for, Jim?
Clue.
If you don't, yeah.
It basically was their role playing game, but we weren't playing it because we had way cooler stuff, and that wasn't. This is a board game.
Attack of
Demon
Mutants
Run was this game that I think Matt has here, which is
correct.
their fan favorite Cthulhu runs. Asteroid Pirates, no. Barbarians, no.
Apache.
Well, you know what? This is awful late. This is 81. We're getting
that's super late, Jim. That's super late.
At this point in time,
that's practically yesterday.
Yeah, it is. Just like last week when I was.
So where are they? Was I right that they're in Texas?
Yeah, they. I believe
Yeah, look at
they
that.
were in Texas. Yeah,
Dallas,
they're in
Texas.
Dallas, I believe.
Well, no wonder they had the rights to the Dallas game.
Of course, Superiority Adventures. Yeah, I don't think I even
Superiority,
saw
which is the sequel to Inferiority.
Yeah, that's right. It's Invasion of Europe in the near future.
Nice. So we have to go find these and play these.
Well, there's some that aren't here, which is really weird, and I don't know why.
Well, maybe they stopped making them or had not yet made them.
Maybe somebody else bought the rights to them, and because there was like there was a naval game, and then I think they made board. Somebody else bought it and made board games out of it. But there was like a Q ship game, which was really fun.
A what ship?
World War I, the Germans made these ships that look like freighters.
Yeah.
But they weren't. They had guns on them, so they would like come up to. They fly a flag of the Allied nation, come up to an Allied trader,
and
merchant, and say, "Hey, you know what's up? We got mail or something." And then when they got close, they drop their side and had guns, and they'd open fire on them and shoot them out of the water, or capture them and get all their good shit.
Yeah, that sounds good. Let's
because
do that.
The Germans had less navy, and they had to make up for the fact that Brits had a bigger navy. Yeah, you can't tell. They were around for a while.
Well, we need to go on eBay and find these and play them.
Well, or go up to Don's house and
just say, "Hey, Don, we need these.
Do we need this game? Which one do you want?
I'll take all of them.